next to Africa, South Asia may be the worst region in the world to live. Like Africa, this region is rich with enough resources to create a more luxurious lifestyle for the people who live there. However, corrupt regimes, terrorism, and civil wars within those nations never allowed for such prosperity, making life harder in those countries. Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Sri Lanka are three South Asian nations which are unfortunately going through cycles of different crises. Today's video is dedicated to the energy crisis in Pakistan, which has kept the whole nation in the dark.
Tens of millions of people were left in the dark after the major power cut. Authorities have blamed the outage on a voltage surge after generators were temporarily switched off to save energy.
This is not a new issue. We are witnessing the peak stage of the crisis, which began 3 decades ago. The roots of this crisis go back to the 1990s, and we are going to discuss how this crisis developed to the level that we see today.
We are in the middle of a first truly global energy crisis.
Nationwide, full blackout for 24 hours or for 12 hours. Imagine the patients who are sitting at home and they have to use nebulizers or humidification or BiPAP machine. What will happen to them?
But before we proceed, hit the subscribe button and smash the bell icon for more exciting updates. Pakistan now has a strict energy conservation policy to save energy for the essential needs of the country. The government has already ordered citizens to close stores by 8:30 p.m. and restaurants by 10:30 p.m., making life harder within Pakistan. By doing so, the Pakistani government expects to save $274 million. In addition, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also made it mandatory for all the government institutions to reduce their average energy consumption by 30%. But none of these solutions are permanent, and they're just trying to reduce the severity of the problem. The government has no proper plan to solve this problem on a long-term basis, and they are just making efforts to make people happy, to preserve their political power. As we mentioned earlier, Pakistan's energy crisis dates back to the 1990s. Before that, the government had a good plan to meet the energy demands of the country by building dams like Mangla and Tarbela, which increased the country's hydropower production. Pakistan experienced steady economic growth during the 1980s, and there was no issue in importing oil from foreign nations to fulfill their energy requirements. So they never made efforts to find alternative power sources and move away from high dependency on fossil fuels imported from foreign nations. In parallel with the rapid economic growth in the 1980s, thousands of industries were created throughout the country, establishing mega-scale factories. This resulted in a rapid rise in energy demand, and by the 1990s, there was a clear deficit between supply and demand. This was further aggravated by population growth and rapid urbanization. By 2012, the demand was 40% higher than the capacity of Pakistan's national supply, with a deficit around 8,500 megawatts. However, at that stage, Pakistan's economy was still in a position to invest in long-term solutions to move the nation out of a severe energy crisis. Pakistan's national supply mainly depends on imported crude oil rather than domestic resources like natural gas, hydroelectricity, and coal, as they fall short of meeting the energy demand. Non-renewable energy sources like oil, coal, and natural gas are depleting rapidly with the extremely high national demand. Pakistan's National Oil and Gas Development Company Limited predicts that oil reserves will be exhausted by the end of 2025. And, most likely, natural gas reserves also have no life expectancy beyond 2030. On the other hand, there are issues with the consistency of hydroelectric power production thanks to the country's ongoing climate situation, as rivers don't receive sufficient recharge through rainfall. For these reasons, they have to depend heavily on foreign crude oil supplies to fulfill their energy demands. According to the data published in a national economic survey from 2021 to 22, the maximum total demand for electricity was around 31,000 megawatts, but the supply was around 22,000 megawatts, creating a deficit of around 9,000 megawatts. The main reason behind Pakistan's energy crisis is the administrations which ran the country in different eras. Like other South Asian nations, Pakistan is also a victim of corrupt political regimes. They have been dealing with this energy crisis for more than 3 decades, and they are still without any long-term national policy regarding energy production. Most of the policies or projects introduced as solutions to this energy crisis are short-lived and subject to mega-scale changes with the change of political regimes.
The resolution for vote of no confidence against Mr. Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Islamic Republic of Pakistan, has been passed by a majority of the total membership of the National Assembly.
In 2010, the Pakistani government announced a national energy plan as a solution to the developing energy crisis, which was still manageable at that time. But it lacked proper energy conservation methods and was ineffectual for that reason. One other reason behind the failures of Pakistan's energy production is the miscoordination between the different institutions responsible for national energy production and conservation. There are several different ministries and agencies responsible for the national energy supply. They have no policy or proper coordination, ultimately leading to a more problematic situation. These mismanagements of relevant authorities have also led to gross inefficiencies, resulting in a 30% loss in transmission and distribution. Although there has been a considerable gap between the demand and the supply in the past, this became a considerable issue since last year. As we mentioned earlier, this is a nation that heavily depends on the crude oil imported from foreign nations. Pakistan's foreign reserves dropped to an alarmingly low level, reducing its ability to buy sufficient amounts of crude oil from foreign nations. According to statistics, their total liquid foreign reserves were recorded at $11.7 billion, which is half the amount they held almost 1 year ago. With the lack of sufficient foreign reserves, the Pakistani government has faced a problem in importing the energy needed to meet demands. They cannot see a possible solution for this overwhelming problem, even as they are trying to enact new energy conservation plans. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's plan is only to present a better image to the Pakistani people with the hidden aim of winning the parliamentary election, which will be held in the near future. Energy conservation plans are just long-term plans which should have been implemented 1 or 2 decades back if these corrupt politicians really wanted to move Pakistan out of an energy crisis. But no one wants to move Pakistan towards more renewable energy sources or towards more energy-saving practices. If Pakistan seeks to move out of this ongoing energy crisis, first they need to have good financial stability, because the current energy conservation plans, which include scheduled power cuts and blackouts, will further damage Pakistan's economy, which is on the verge of a heavy collapse. When imposing the regulations, the government has to be more careful on this matter. Now, Pakistan is accepting the help of the International Monetary Fund to stabilize its economy, and the government should be thoughtful in investing a part of those IMF funds to direct the energy sector towards more renewable energy sources. Then, they can reduce the amount of crude oil imported from foreign nations, at least in the future. Pakistan is a country which receives good sunlight all year in most regions, so it's possible to promote solar energy within Pakistan. In addition, it's also possible to develop wind power plants, thanks to the number of regions with good wind conditions for such investments. The Chagai district in Balochistan and the Nikundi area on the Afghan border are some potential locations to build wind power plants. According to estimations, it's possible to generate 3,000 megawatts through micro hydropower projects, and only 150 megawatts are utilized so far. So, 1/3 of the current deficit can be balanced through micro hydropower projects if the Pakistan government works with a clear idea of their available resources. Tidal power has also been identified as a possible renewable energy source within Pakistan, but it's not on an operational level yet. Unfortunately, all these investments are very expensive, and the Pakistan government cannot afford such investments now. If state agencies have no capacity for such investments, the Pakistani government could open the energy sector to foreign investors as a solution to the prevailing energy deficit. If they cannot solve the issue within a short time period, many industries will leave the country, hurting the economy further. What do you think about the ongoing energy crisis in Pakistan? Will Sharif's government be able to solve the issue? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel to get more exciting economic and political news. See you guys in the next video. Goodbye.